Welcome back to AnglingBuzz Ice. I'm Jake Wallace, and today we're headed to Lake Oahe in South Dakota. Now, Lake Oahe is a fish factory. It's been kicking out huge walleyes in recent years, but on this trip, we're going to be targeting something a little different. Now, before we head to South Dakota, I want to show you one cool feature on the OnX app, and it's how to get driving directions to any lake you want to fish. Tonight, I want to go target walleyes on a new body of water. So all you do is you open up the app, you select the boat launch to the lake you want to fish, and then on the bottom, there's going to give a tab for driving directions. Click on that, and it'll give you the option for Apple Maps or Google Maps. I'm going to go Apple Maps and hit go. And I can hook it up with the CarPlay, and right there I've got driving directions to the lake, get me right to the boat launch and I go catch some fish. Now let's head to South Dakota, where we'll join Chad Schilling and Mike Canner as they catch and clean catfish.
We are Central Lake Oahe, right here out of Swan Creek today, and we're targeting the wily catfish. And that's not a hard species to target. Right now, a little harder to get to bite because they've just been in a funky mood, but there's a million of them around, and with the nice weather, we're hoping to get them fired up today. Tim! Oh, I lost that one. Sorry, Tim. Can't get them to eat. You work them, and then all of a sudden they're eating two at a time. I had to come up, Tim, to the one about 6-8 feet off the bottom to get him to eat. He's not a giant, but he's the kind of person wants to put in a frying pan. Holy cow, is there a lot of them down there. So yeah, look at that. That's just a pretty fish. Says nobody, but except me. The problem with a catfish on a jigging wrap is they really like to break your fins off. You want to be careful right at this point. Don't go grabbing with the pliers and just sneak it out of them. But I mean, as pretty as you can build them, they're just try to keep him out there in the sun for you, but he's just beautiful. They're so much fun to catch, and I had a double hooked, and I'm about to get another one. That's a fun thing. When you do get them fired up, they're kind of like bass. Keep them fired up, so I'm gonna get right back down there. I tried a little trick that one of my buddies who does a ton of catfishing, and something we actually did for the walleyes up in Lake Winnipeg, is I put the minnow on the bottom hook and I just buried it right through the skull. I pinched it off normal length, just like your walleye fishing, and then I take that tail and I slide it in the, get it hooked here, right? Slide it on the tail and kind of just give my, pretty much wrecking all good action a jigging wrap can have, but when you're just moping it in front of a catfish, I don't know how that could look much better, so. All right. You know, I just showed you that I'm tipping these, and when I'm walleye fishing, primarily I don't use bait on them. A little more aggressive action, I snap them. One of the key points to not having bait on there, I got a customer who catches a fish, I drop my rod and I run over there. Catfish most of the time won't eat and drag your rod off the ice when it's laying there with no bait. You leave a minnow on there and it's in danger. So at times we don't put a minnow on to avoid the catfish. They get so thick, if you do want to catch a walleye, you put a minnow down there, you won't get through the catfish to catch a walleye. So but in order to save your rod, it's always a good idea. Go naked, I guess, is the best way to put it. So, oh shoot, here they come again. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what to jig at. There's so many down there right now. If you watch them on a camera, they go up and they like lift your bait with their nose. It's like they sit there and just taste it for a while. Oh, yep. That's what he's doing. Come on, buddy. I ain't gonna move you. You know how to eat. I don't have to help you. In my history, I've lived on Oahe my whole life, and there's always been incredible numbers of catfish. The river system is the old river system. The Missouri River had lots of cottonwood trees, and we have the Morrow River right across from here with the tributaries. It was all full of timber. Well, back when I was a kid, we would just go tie to any tree, drop down, jig in a crawler, and catch catfish until we were tired of it. A lot of that timber's been torn out. You know, low water years, the ice in the spring moves and shifts and it pulls a lot of the old timber out. So target them hasn't been as easy because people can't just go tie to a tree and catch them like normal. forward-facing sonar, just any sonar. It doesn't have to be forward-facing anymore. You drive around and find them, and now with spot lock and all that stuff in the summertime, we anchor on these, and little, you know, not that much more complicated, but a little bit more tech savvy, and you can target them in the summer, and we do that a bunch. I think there's always been a ton of catfish. What there has been is a lot of pressure on them. Just not a lot of people ever go target catfish, and I don't understand it. As far as table fare, you clean them up, get rid of just a little bit of that red meat along the skin, and chop them up and fry them with your walleyes, and half the people you feed them to won't know the difference. So and they fight so good. I mean, it's obvious when you hook one because you're boom, boom, they bounce and roll while you're reeling them in, but they're a ton of fun to catch, and it's definitely a fish that goes unutilized on the Missouri River for the most part. Here he comes. Oh. Oh, he's just touching it. Ah! I mean, he just ran into it a couple times, but that's a good sign. Get him fired back up here and catch a few. Come on, buddy, come do that again. I probably shouldn't have done the walleye, take it away from him. I should have sat there and waited for him just to eat it, but... And what am I there? I'm in 40 feet of water, and I'm up at 30, so I'm 10 feet off the bottom. There's catfish for 10 feet down there. If I was walleye fishing, I would walk away from this hole as fast as possible, because you're never going to catch a walleye. You got to hide from the catfish half the time. So right now we're just trying to provoke a few of them into eating here again. That one bumped it, and that's all it takes usually. Get one to bite a little bit, and then they'll all start eating. Come on back, guys. People think we're nuts on this kind of walleye fishery out here catching catfish. Not a real big one, but the telltale sign, the boom, boom. Come here, little buddy. Oh, and that's exactly the size you want to eat. That's 1.5 pounds, you know, just over a pound. Those are the ones that fry up the best. And that was just on the old lead head jig with a couple minnows on it. I put a couple minnows to try to get them fired up, but I mean, everybody likes the big ones, and they're way more fun to catch, but when you get them up in that 3 to 4 pound range, they do get a little greasy, and these right here, they fry up with your walleyes and perch and stuff like that, and it's hard to tell the difference. Everybody's like, oh, I don't want to eat a catfish. Well, out of this clean, clear water, it doesn't get a whole lot better. So here we go. Let's get another one. So what I did with the lead head is I threaded the one minnow on, and when they're biting like they normally do and they're just super aggressive, it doesn't matter, but I actually pinched him off, and I saved that tail for the back of my jig wrap, and then I put a full minnow on there, just kind of doubling up the scent, giving it a little bigger profile. And when they're not wanting to eat, that's just too much to resist. They gotta grab a hold of that, so I'll send that down there. What I do, one thing I'll do a lot of times on my dead stick, I really like them sitting on a bucket or something where they're real handy, and I'll pick it up and I'll set it down. Because catfish, I mean, when they're in a bad mood, they are the hardest fish to hook, and yet they're so catchable. What I do when I set it down is I watch that line. If that line don't keep falling, I set the hook. I never feel the fish, to be honest. I just know he's sitting there within his mouth, because that's the only way he can hold it from falling. So what I'll do is I'll watch it, and he's touching it. I'll just pick it up and drop my tip, and if that doesn't keep falling, if it goes slack, I set the hook. And 90% of the time, I'll never felt the fish. His brother's gonna want us to stay and hang out and all that, and we'll just tell him we gotta go.
Bingo.
All right, Tim. Ooh.
Oh, wait.
Oh, got a double. I'm coming.
Hit it.
Oh, shoot. Get it?
I think he dumped. I think he dumped.
You know, you work so hard to get a bite.
Or he got tangled in that line, potentially.
You got a good one, didn't you, bud?
I think he feels.
Oh, yep, I'm into your line. I'm just going to let this one go.
That's what he did.
Like I like to say in the summertime, Tim, bend your knees, don't hurt your back.
My back's still.
Ah, just a nice one. Oh, look at there, and he snuck up under the jigging wrap. Oh, yeah. Sorry, bud, I grabbed your fish here. I'm trying to save. He got into the other line, so.
He's croaking.
And what's crazy is, you know, I think it's a pretty good sign of what's about to happen with this bite. I want to show you something here once I get him pulled out. Well, I don't even have to. When I first grabbed him, his whole belly was covered in that mud. See the mud on?
Right there.
They've been laying around in a bad mood after them huge cold fronts. And like his whole belly, like, well, there it is. It's all on my hand now. They've just been laying around, you know, that cold front, post-cold front. But all of a sudden now that we're seeing him 6-8 feet, how high was he up off the bottom?
A couple feet.
Yeah, so they're moving up. They're gonna hopefully get fired up here.
That's that one. Maybe I'll just take this off.
There we go.
Yeah, just hold that guy up.
I'm holding your fish, Tim. This ain't very good.
I've held plenty.
Cool. Yeah, his belly was just black with mud when he come up out of the hole. Holy crap, look at that screen.
I thought he was going to be a little better than that.
Boy, he did fight, didn't he?
That's fun though. I like it. I like it.
And I'm just using the same beat up old bait. We messed around with a couple other things, but we went to the tried and true. We went to a horizontal presentation. We've got the jigging wrap with a couple minnows hanging on there, and the lead head jig, we've got it tilted so it's just hanging in the water. Put 2 minnows on and started getting quite a few more bites. So some days just play with that. I mean, a spoon with a minnow hanging down there has caught 1 million walleyes and 1 million catfish and every other kind of species. But the horizontal bait a lot of times will prevail, and just try different things. I mean, they don't ever want the same thing day to day, and a lot of times they don't want it hour to hour. So just keep changing things up. But here lately, that horizontal bite's done it. The horizontal bait's done it. There he is. No question, when you set the hook and they do that. You know, they're kind of been a little bit in a funky mood here towards dark, and I thought that's when they'd really go crazy, but we've had a couple of them bumping it here. Ooh, that old roll. Look at that. Nice. Come on, buddy, get your head in the hole. Oh, heck yeah. Perfect one. You see that? He put his tail up and he flipped himself out of the hole. That's courteous of him. There's that. Look at the mud on their bellies.
Just give me some kind of
double hook.
Loose clothes on.
Well, here we are. What a beautiful day. We went out and shot a few pheasants. Come out this afternoon, and on the world-renowned walleye lake, we went and caught us some catfish.
Catfish are a very popular sport fish and eating fish across North America. Anglers target them year-round, and most anglers, when they clean them, are used to skinning them. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, and today we're going to fillet a catfish. Now, filleting a catfish is a tiny bit different than filleting other fish such as a walleye or a crappie. There's some odd little bones and turns in them, but we're going to go through a step-by-step and show you how to do it. So normally when I would clean, say, a walleye, I would start out by lifting the pectoral fin, making a slit underneath up to the top of the backbone. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start right at the top of the backbone, push the knife in and run it right down the backbone around the top of the ribs. Now when you get to the bone, or the top dorsal fin, there's a little bone you have to go around. It's almost like a little bump in its back. So you go around that and just run this knife down the backbone like you would any other fish. You get to about the start of the anal fin here, and you can see this is where the rib cage ends. So then you can just take your knife, stick it all the way through, and then you're just going to cut the fish, fillet it down the backbone like you would any other fish. So now what we're going to do, we got this part of it done. We're going to cut back up towards the ribs. And as we cut back up towards the ribs, we're just going to keep going around the top of the rib cage until we get so far down, and then we're just gonna, the ribs in the middle are so thin there's hardly any meat around them, so we're just gonna cut like that, and we've got a nice fillet here. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side. We're taking the fish and we're poking it in. So here's the dorsal fin, here's the top of the head. We're gonna put the knife in right here. We're gonna run it down, and there's this, right in here, there's a little bone you gotta go around the dorsal fin. Okay, I'm gonna lay it on its side, and then again, I'm just gonna run the knife down to about the end of the ribs, push through. You can see I push the knife through the other side, and then I'm just running it right down the backbone like you would any other fish for a nice clean fillet. Then we're gonna run the knife back up towards the head, start to go around the rib cage, like so, and then when we get halfway around the rib cage, we're just gonna poke the knife through and cut the fillet off, like so. So now we've got 2 catfish fillets right here. Now if you look at this fish here, you might think, why didn't he go all the way around the rib cage like you would on a walleye or a crappie, where there's a lot more meat around the ribs when you cut it off at the belly? Well, if you look here, there's just not really any meat here. The skin's basically attached to the ribs, so you're just kind of wasting your time trying to get around it. So by cutting it short like that, you're not wasting any meat. Now what I will say is if you're dealing with a much bigger fish, like a 6, 8, 10-pound catfish, there obviously is more meat, and you can take your time going around the ribs and up closer to the pectoral fin. For these littler fish, there's not as much meat. You're not wasting meat if you're not going all the way around the rib cage. So now we've come to the fillets, and that's the other wrap on catfish, is they got what they call a mud line, or the dark red meat along the between the meat and the skin. And there's a couple ways you can do this. We're going to show, I'll show you one way each way. So the first thing I'm going to do is just fillet the meat off the skin like you would any other fish. You're going to cut down to the skin, and you have to be a little bit more careful because there's no scale, so the skin's a little can be more fragile. It can be cut through. So we're just going to cut it like we normally do a regular fish. We're going to cut it down to the skin, take the fillet off, go along like this. And if you look right here, this is what they, anglers will call the mud line or the red line, and it's just basically a strip of red muscle meat along the back of the fish. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to take this, and we're going to cut it right down the middle, like so. Cut it in half, and then we got this little angle of this muscle meat. We're just going to cut it off like this. Get one little fillet, or one little piece of the fillet there. Cut this little chunk off too. And then do the same on the other side. Cut at an angle. Cut this off. Second one, and then there's just a little bit of dark meat on top. This fatty meat, we're just going to shave this off like this. And we've got us 2 nice little fillets of meat right there. So the second way you could do it, if you want to take your time, takes a little bit more muscle memory and of doing it a number of times, is you can take your knife, grab the back of the skin again, and instead of cutting down to the skin and going, you're going to stop and try to feather the knife above that fatty line. So right now I'm keeping the knife above, just leaving a little bit of meat and skin, meat on the skin when I'm filleting it. It's it takes a few times for doing it, but you just end up leaving a little bit more meat on the skin. But then when you're done, you can see, well, I left a little up here, but you can see in this section right here, like basically all that red meat is gone. So I just have to touch it up here a little bit, but that is another way you can do this to get that red line of meat off the fish. And the reason we're cutting this red meat off of there is this is the meat that's stronger and has more of a fishy taste. So if you want a cleaner tasting fillet, you want to remove this red line or the red muscle off of the meat and just get it down to the white muscles to get the fishier taste out of the fillet. All right, so The next time you're out catfishing and you're not dealing with really small cats, you're getting some mid-sized catfish, don't feel like you just have to skin them, take the head off and have a whole body chunk of a catfish. You can actually fillet these fish and get a nice white firm piece of meat to do fish fingers, fish fillets, throw them in the deep fryer, whatever you want.